Okay, day one in North Creek Forest. There's a really creepy house with boarded windows. So if we die, that's why.
Alright, so here we found a red cedar. We can tell because it's really thick and huge and it does look kind of red. But mainly, we can see here from the leaves, they're kind of like that, which is pretty distinctive against the Douglas fir and the western hemlock.
Western red cedar is an icon to the northwestern forest. It has a sturdy trunk covered with fibrous bark. It grows straight and tall but is a lighter green than a conifer tree. In coastal lowland forest, red cedar seeds can germinate in fall, winter, or spring, creating a large number of new seedlings. Western red cedar is a relatively large tree, reaching 100 to 200 feet tall. The largest known western red cedar grows near the northwest shore, near Aberdeen, Washington. It is over 170 feet tall and nearly 20 feet in diameter.
And we are seeing this entire community of Douglas firs right here. Yeah, there's one here, one here, and it just comes outward. It's beautiful. Now, so the difference, we can also see the leaves. They are way longer, 3 inches at most. And I think the western hemlock, like 1 inch, so way smaller. The pine cones are like, smaller too. So we'll let you know once we come across the western hemlock. But for now, just admire the Douglas Fir Forest so far.
Douglas fir is the hallmark of the northwestern timber industry. They typically have a full canopy of long, outward projecting limbs with abundant branchlets. Douglas fir needles are 3 inches on average and more flat compared to the western hemlock. Douglas firs can survive in a variety of climates, including very dry, low elevation location, and moist sites. When grown in natural conditions, Douglas firs can live for 70 to 1,000 years. They have a thick bark that protects them from moderate fires. The thick bark and roots protect the cambium from heat damage.
Day two in North Creek Park.
Oh my god, who is that?
These two idiots. Oh god. Oh my god, it's Anna and Alex.
We made it, bruh.
You got the whole family here.
So we found this western hemlock after looking for a while because we didn't see any low-hanging branches, simply because this is one of those trees that isn't very resistant to fire. So if you look up there, you can see some of its needles and get a close-up of them right over here.
And these are the needles. About an inch or so in length, flat, dark on one side, dark on the top side, lighter on the bottom, compared to the
Douglas fir, and if you can see, the needles are way bigger in length, so it's pretty easy to distinguish between a Douglas fir and a western hemlock solely based on the needle size alone.
The western hemlock, also known as hemlock fir and Prince Albert's fir, is a timber tree often 200 feet tall with a trunk of 6 to 10 feet in diameter. Hemlocks have narrow, flat needles that are usually only 1 inch long. Seedlings of western hemlocks often begin life on the decaying wood of nurse logs or stumps in the shade of Douglas firs. The western hemlock is a favorite nesting tree for many birds, like chickadees and crossbills. Porcupines, Douglas squirrels, and other mammals also eat the bark.
Yo, what's this? Looks like a maple leaf with holes in it. It's probably because the bugs ate it, because there's nitrogen in the leaves, and bugs will suck nitrogen out of any living thing they see. Usually it's leaves, but see here they had a good go at it. There's a lot of leaves around here with holes, probably because of the bugs.
Yeah, the bugs.
Yeah.
Mushrooms!
decomposer mushrooms.
On a dead tree.
They decompose dead
Dead
trees.
log.
Or dead logs, whatever, to gain nutrients and live.
Oh no, is he doing it again?
Oh no!
Alex! Come back! Oh my god, no!
Why are you always talking about trees so much, you weirdo? What's so special about them?
You'll never understand. I've done my research. This tree means a lot to a lot of different people. For example,
Prior to the arrival of the Europeans, indigenous communities had several uses for the Douglas fir, including using its needles as a deodorant of sorts and utilizing its resin for medicinal purposes. Because of its thick, resilient bark, it made for high-quality firewood, something that European settlers quickly noticed when they arrived in North America. These properties would drive Douglas fir to become the most popular source of lumber by the mid-20th century. While today it is not as popular, it is still occasionally used for plywood and is used to build things like furniture. Native Americans saw high medicinal value in the western hemlock. They would boil extracts from the bark of the tree to curate medicine that could treat anything from hemorrhage or tuberculosis. Boiling the bark itself produced a dye that made fishing nets darker and thus more difficult for fish to spot in the water. Its lumber was originally regarded as largely useless due to its consistency. However, it now enjoys widespread use for its pulp that can be turned into paper. Indigenous cultures regarded the western red cedar as the tree of life. Its bark was woven to make baskets for infants and clothes for their mothers. They also used its wood to build canoes to go fishing in. The earliest European settlers used western red cedar to construct their log cabins. It is still widely used today due to being slow to decay and receptive of treatments. Its extracts are also used in essential oils and perfumes.
Michael Pavlov's Too Long, Too Silent research paper, in short, talks about the importance of cedar trees to the Skokomish tribe and why it should be preserved. There are a lot of points in that paper that talk about the roles these trees play in the tribe's culture and how big of a role it has. One example is in the first quote on the top left, explaining how the cedar trees play a role in educating the tribe's young. The trees have a clear importance in helping educate the tribe's young about the importance of certain elements of nature, like water and animals and their roles in nature. This passage also mentions how this type of learning is traditional, so that means it has been done for many generations, which really shows the importance that these cedar trees have in the Skokomish tribe culture. And that importance is connected to the second quote, which calls the cedar trees cedar people, which really enhances their importance in their tribe's culture by actually calling the trees people, which leads to them almost seeming like members of the tribe and becoming parts of the tribe's identity. A second piece of writing stating this cultural importance is in the Tulalip tribe member Maria Martin's story, Her First Basket, which tells the story of a little girl who creates the very first basket made up of a cedar tree. In the first quote, it already starts off with giving the cedar tree a sort of authority by calling it the grandmother. In many Native American tribes, the eldest member were considered wise, knowledgeable, and people who deserve respect. So by calling the cedar tree a grandmother, it gives this traditional high authority status to it. Ross Gay's poem, Burial, shows the spiritual effect trees have on people. In short, the poem talks about how Ross planted a plum tree with his father's ashes and goes on to say how he feels. The first quote describes how his father's spirit is transferred into the tree. He describes the ashes as magic since in his eyes, his father's spirit is in these ashes, and that spirit connection is almost like magic. It's just a feeling that can't really be explained. And how he writes, the magic dust our body becomes casts spells on the roots, explaining how his father's spirit is sort of getting reborn in the roots of the tree he planted him with, describing it as a spell to keep it with the magical experience as he describes it as. In the second passage, he describes how his father is almost living inside this tree. He describes his actions as if he was living again, having him say, good morning, and describing him as giddy, as if he is listening to his father's spirit inside the tree.